All right, welcome back to the War Room. I'm here with Carson once again. It's been a fat minute. Of course, all of the craziest stuff happens while we're traveling in the summer, and all kinds of stuff comes up. But man, we've got a lot to talk about in regards to motocross this season. I mean, I think in regards to just having a good season and good competition with both classes, this is pretty much all you can ask for, right? I mean, we're 5 rounds in now,
Yeah.
about to preview Redbud.
Yeah, and we've got a tight championship in the 450s, 250s. Not as much, but boy, it's been every weekend is so exciting, dude. I mean, it's twists and turns. It's been awesome.
Well, and even with the 250s, I mean, we were talking about this earlier. We were kind of putting our notes down and everything. It's like, yeah, Deegan's been dominating, but he's had so many like comeback rides that there's just been unlimited action on track. It's not like he's been getting out and then gapping the field by 25 seconds like we had to watch with Jett and Chase a lot of the times, with inevitably Chase, tucking the front, unfortunately. Last season in the 450s. This has been like, yes, he's been winning a crap ton of these, but heck, 2 of the 5 overalls he's won has had a moto where he's fallen down leading and then come back and pass, at least 5 or 6 guys to get it back, and it's been a fight all the way. So, yeah, I mean, we're gonna go ahead.
Well, with Deegan, I think he's still got that, like, he's not a rookie anymore, obviously, but it's not like Jett, where if Jett starts out at the back of the pack, like, there's just something in you that knows he's going to be at the front by the end of the race. With Deegan, he's still got that, like, is he going to do it? I don't know. Like, it's not a guaranteed thing. Obviously, with nobody, it is, but there's something about it that's still maybe it's his riding style where he could go down at any minute, but yeah, it's so much fun to watch right now.
No, absolutely, absolutely. So we're gonna break down last week into Southwick and some of the other stuff that's been going on, and then we'll preview Redbud for this weekend. That's gonna be an awesome round. I can't wait for it. But before we get to that, this is the first time we really had breaking news on this podcast, because this was revealed at like 9 p.m. last night by Honda. I would say the title. I mean, pretty much everyone's going to say the title favorite, even though he's technically tied with Chase for second in the 450 title hunt. Jett Lawrence is out for the rest of the motocross season. I remember I just saw that on Twitter and went, no. And like, this is no way. Like, Jett has this like inevitability to him. Like, he is like super skinny Thanos with an Australian
Inevitability
accent and no purple
That's
skin.
a perfect word. Yeah.
He's just inevitable. But even with that, like, Chase and Hunter have been giving a great run for his money. He's had a lot of good differing results, and part of that has been he's been battling that shoulder injury from High Point. But still, I mean, it's been awesome to see this 3-way battle, and it's this weird conundrum of an injury that's honestly really rare in this sport, with a UCL tear in the thumb, just like Tomac and just like Webb. You've got 3 of arguably your 5 best 450 riders who've had all had the same like freak injury. That's like just so. I mean, even Lars Lindstrom in the official PR mentioned how rare this injury is, but how, for whatever reason, like, we have 3 of your best riders that are dealing with this. Like, I don't know. I mean, so that kind of takes the title down to Chase and Hunter, and we'll preview it a little bit more when we get to the back end of Redbud. But like, what are your thoughts on how this is going to? Now, I will preface with this: Honda has said that they're knocking out the surgery now. They're not going to try to have him ride out the rest of this motocross season and try to like do what Webb was doing, where he's like tucking his thumb over the bike and racing with like basically what used to be called suicide grip when you're doing bench press. Trying to ride like that. It's they're not going to mess around with that, because they want getting the surgery done today. They said that he should be able to be back by September 7th for the opening round of SMX. So he won't be out for the rest of the year. But hearing this news, what have been your thoughts? Kind of seeing one of the big 3 taken out.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely opens the door, obviously, for Chase and Hunter. And even though Hunter's still in the lead for the points, but even still, what was that word you used? Inevitability perfect. Like, there's just something about whenever Jett's on the track, it's like he's gonna win, you know? And
Especially
so
outdoors,
now,
especially outdoors.
yeah, now, dude, it's such a toss-up. I mean,
Mhm.
it could go either way between Hunter and Chase. Like, I think Hunter is a little bit faster and has been a few times, but I think that's just because Chase still hasn't totally gotten comfortable on the bike yet. They were talking last weekend, he's still changing some settings and things. So, I think this is going to be a great, great battle to the end. Like, I think they've both got a shot. So, it sucks. Obviously, you want to see Jett out there and everybody healthy, and you want to see, ideally the championship comes down to who's the best rider, and there's no injuries, right? That's
Yep.
that's what you want as a fan, and I'm sure as the competitors, that's what they would like. Like, Chase wants to go win a championship and nobody have gotten hurt the whole time, and he just won straight up. Anybody would want that.
Yep.
But yeah, I think it's going to be some great, great battles between the two of them because they've been battling, a few times, but it's like, oh, battling for second, battling for third. It's not as cool and not as much fun as battling for first. So yeah, I
Well,
think
I
it's gonna be
mean,
very
but
exciting.
to be fair, like a lot of the first 5 rounds, you have Hunter and Jett and Chase all trading places for first.
Very true.
Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, heck, that was the case this last weekend at Southwick. Like, at one point,
Yeah.
Jett got the whole shot. Heck, this is Moto 2, I believe. Jett rips the whole shot, right? Chase went full like just degaff mode for about two laps, and basically almost shoved Hunter off the track. Hunter finally tapped into like that more aggressive nature that comes out once in a blue moon for him, and said, "Okay, I'm going to come back through and just dice up Chase." And then apparently that was enough for him to go dice up his brother too. So within 2 laps later, all of a sudden Hunter Lawrence is in the lead for a good amount of time. Jett is trailing with him for a good amount of time. As we've seen with a lot of motos, sometimes he'll just follow Hunter until he's just ready to make the move. As long as he can keep within sight, he'll just like cruise and just stay behind Hunter, and then make his move when he feel like it's kind of like the time when you have 15 or 10 to go, and then try to break away, or just tow Hunter along to separate from Chase. It's weird how Jett was handling that. But yeah, so then Jett had the lead, then Hunter takes the lead, and then Jett takes it back. Then Chase ends up passing both of them, and obviously part of Jett's inconsistencies in the second moto that we've seen over the last three weeks, and especially at Southwick with how hard that track is. It's one of the most like hard tracks in your body. Has been that shoulder injury. So from him going down at High Point, he's been quoted many times as saying he has to ride more with his legs. He can't use his arms as much. So he is getting tired quicker because he's only able to use, a smaller portion of his body to be able to move that bike around. And when you think about how much Jett does use his arms, especially for setting up for ruts, one of the crazy facts I looked at, I think I heard this on the Pulp Show a while back, was Jett runs like the guys who have gotten to test Jett's bikes. He runs a ridiculously stiff steering setup, like to the point that it's like a steering dampener times 10, to the point that when you watch a lot of guys go over a triple or something like that, and they're trying to lean the bike over or just like set up the front wheel for the next rut, most of them will be able to just turn the actual front wheel with the bars themselves until it locks out. And then when it locks out the steering, then they can keep using their arms. And then at that point, now you're starting to lean the bike over, right? With Jetts, this is going off of I believe Justin Thomas and some other guys on the Pulp Show. With Jetts, you're straight up able to, like, when you're in the air, like if you turn the steering just a couple of notches or whatnot, the whole bike's just tilting over. It's the weirdest. Like he can adjust the little micro adjustments he'll make in the air to tilt that bike over just by using his arms and not having to like completely lean over, but just tilting the bike over just with the steering input is insane. It just further proves he's that much of an alien, but that also does mean he is using a lot of his arms to set up for ruts. And more importantly, just his riding style in general does. I mean, you think about how often he stands up in corners, right? a lot more pressure on your arms, right? So obviously that was playing a factor into how close it was between all three of them. I think with a 100% healthy Jett, it's harder for those other two to close into him and pass him so often. Not often on the passing side, but often with closing up to him. And I mean, heck, Hunter's passed him multiple times. Chase has passed him and beaten him multiple times within these first 5 rounds. Yet Jett still had this inevitability dealing with a shoulder injury and battling 2 other great dudes. It was crazy to watch. So it sucks that you're losing one of the legs of this 3-way battle, but I'm just thankful we'll get him back for SMX, because the last thing you want is for your big finale playoff run of the season not to have one of your 3 big dogs of this series. We can't forget that Tomac and Webb are coming back for that as well. Not exactly sure on their return for those two. Webb is currently back on the bike, but just doing turn tracks. Tomac, typical Tomac, haven't heard a word. He'll just let you know about a day before, and we'll be like, oh, he's back. It could be like Unadilla, who knows? But we do know they'll both be back for SMX, and luckily Jett too. So yeah. So I mean, that kind of recaps all of Southwick for the most part, because pretty much everyone else, I mean, was kind of out of the picture. There wasn't anyone touching those 3 guys. But what are your major points that you saw for the 250s of Southwick? Because there was a good amount to talk about there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, Deegan was riding incredible. They were talking about how they had gone to the track the week before and was getting some practice in, which was clear. You know, he was running lines that nobody else was, and he was just out there ripping, which is obviously different from last year. He didn't do quite as well at the Wick, and yeah, he was doing great. But that second moto, I mean, I don't know what the way the points check out, if it's a long shot, but Joe Shimoda, dude, might be. I mean, he's in there, and he was riding well. And so that was great to see. Now we got another name in the mix that for someone who could, I mean, maybe he's not a championship contender at this point in the series, but at least someone who can, provide some action and make the second half of the season interesting. So yeah, it's and I say, well, how does it work out with the math? I mean, if Deegan goes down in a Moto 1, has a crash, and he can't come back for Moto 2, I mean, that's a lot of points lost. So something like that small could totally shift this thing. And so you get somebody like
crash where he was down for 1 moto, but then raced the next one and got like 3rd or 4th or 5th or something like that at High Point.
Dude,
I mean, that created this whole 3-way battle in 1 weekend.
Hunter has no wins, and he's in first right now. Like, no overalls. Like, it's crazy.
Insane.
So, yeah. So, I mean, things can change the blink of an eye. And now we've got another guy up there who's got the speed. And that's awesome, man. I mean, we got, the last, what was it, like 5 minutes of that moto, the 250s, and that's at Moto 2. Holy cow, that was awesome. Because it looked like,
amazing.
I was sitting there watching. Yeah, I watched it. I think I watched 2 days later because I was at the lake all weekend. But when I was watching, I was like, okay, like this thing's pretty much wrapped up. Vial's got an 8-second lead on Shimoda or something like that. And then you keep watching, it's like, oh, 6-second lead. Oh, 4-second lead. Oh, 2. Oh, wow. They're right there on him. Oh, what was it? Shimoda passed him and then Vial went down, or was it? I think that's what happened, right? Shimoda passed him and he went down. Yeah. And dude, Shimoda was ripping. He was ripping. And everybody knows he's a second half guy. Okay.
Well,
and
don't forget, Deegan was out front for a while. Yeah, no, Shimoda is a second half guy. I was going to get into that. But don't forget, Deegan went down in the lead after getting pressured by Vial in the first. I think he went down in the first 5 or 6 laps, I want to say. Give or take.
It was pretty soon. It was, yeah.
He wasn't leading for too long. I know it wasn't right after the whole shot because Vial was right on his tail, like 1 second off for a while. But when he first went down, he came out around 6th or 7th, like right by Masterpool or Kitchen.
Yeah.
And, a couple laps later, like, hey, he's coming. Watch the lap times. This is gonna be must. I think Adam Cianciarulo, who was making his TV debut this weekend as a commentator, you can say, hey, this is gonna be must TV, huh?
That's a great job, by the way.
AC did
great. Did awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm so excited for what he's going to continue to do. I'd rather him on a bike, but I understand he's got so many injuries that this is the best way he can contribute for the sport, and he is just fantastic. He's going to be fantastic.
100%.
But yes, they were all hyping him up. Like, we know he's coming back. We'll watch his lap times. He's going to make his way through the pack. It's must see TV. He's going to be there in the end. And we got about like 8 laps later, and Deegan was majorly held up by Levi Kitchen. I think it was Kitchen. Yeah. And, he also had to work his way through like Masterpool, a bunch of, a couple other guys, gets his way to third final. Jalik Swole. That's yes.
Yeah.
Getting the 5th and through 4th was a big problem for him. I think it was Kitchen and it was Kitchen and Jalik that were just beautifully riding defensive. Which goes to Southwick having a lot more sections that are just one line. Which that was the only negative on the track for the weekend. It wasn't as bad as pretty much half the nationals last year because they overwatered pretty much 90% of those tracks last year and made them all one line and just made it all rut cross. But it was a little bit easier to ride defensive this weekend, and Deegan was a little bit held up from that. So when I watched the lap times and he finally got to third, I was like, okay, can he put it into charge now? He was about 10, 11 seconds off. He was getting to probably basically put down at a minimum, like, 3/4 of a second per lap to be able to, at their current pace, catch up to Vial and Shimoda. And, Shimoda was 5 seconds off of Vial at that, or 8 seconds actually off of Vial at the time. Vial was putting in some burners. And I just kept looking at the lap times, waiting for Deegan to take a chunk out, and it just wasn't happening. And finally,
he was stuck there at that 10-second spot for a while.
Exactly. And then Vial hit some lap traffic that took out a decent amount of his gap to begin with. That got Shimoda within about a second and a half. Shimoda was able to walk that down. At that same time, Shimoda was making up those 2 seconds. I think the timing sheets were saying that Deegan just out of nowhere, like we've continued to see in the last couple laps of the race. You think about over at not High Point, after High, where Masterpool got his win. It wasn't High Point. It was bro. I'm losing it here.
Hang on. Thunder Valley.
Yeah, dude. We saw Deegan in the last couple laps taking 4 seconds per lap out of the lead, like catching up to both Hymas and Masterpool for that race win, right? So, and all of a sudden, same thing again. Like he was at least 8 seconds off after, and this is after Vial's lap traffic that got Shimoda in range. He was still 8 seconds off. Once again, taking 4 or 5 seconds a lap and gets in striking distance with Vial after Shimoda takes it, and that and then
Vial goes down.
Yeah, Vial goes down, and then I was like, well, shoot. I mean, Shimoda's right there. We could have a nice little fight for the second win here, the second moto win. But then Deegan looks down and sees his bike smoking and goes in limp home mode because he's like, I got the overall. I'm good.
Yeah.
So that was just a wild turn of events in the 250s. But couple other things in the 250s that we saw was Max Anstey returning. And, I think we may have even talked about this in the preview show, but it was kind of like the worst kept secret in regards to in the Supercross season of him going to Yamaha. But we didn't know if he was going to be able to leave Firepower Honda like in the middle of the season to go to Yamaha, which, to be fair, the Firepower Honda contract with him, I believe, was a Supercross only contract. So I think it was a pretty easy like breach clause for him to leave, or whatever technical lawyer talk you want to discuss. But so he made his debut at Southwick. Moto 1 was rough. He kind of fell over, and then the bike was all messed up after that. It was having some issues, so he did not finish Moto 1. Oh, well, actually, he didn't fall over. He got T-boned. That's what he said. And then the bike just quit after that. And then Moto 2, he got 10th. So more in the right direction. But what do you think about the long-term outlook with Max Anstey joining Yamaha, aka if you want to race at all ever at any point in your career, we're going to sign you and we're going to have 40 guys at the gate, so that way one of them's going to win.
Yeah, I mean, if he's going to have a solid shot at a championship, and at right now, I think that's a great place for him to be. He's obviously got to get used to the bike. It's, it's not a ton different, but it's a different bike, no question. So he's got that to deal with.
Way better power.
Way better power. He's coming in the middle of the season. So, obviously you don't want, like, no one's expecting him to be in contention for anything. But by the time we get to SMX, I think he could be ripping. And yeah, I mean, obviously he's been on this program before, but it was long enough ago that, it's not really the same program at all. So it's, in name only really on that front. But yeah, I think it's a great move. And obviously it's a factory team, so it's going to be better than the situation he's got over at Firepower Honda. Although his results over there were not bad.
Yeah,
like if you look, wins. He had better results than a lot of guys on the Star Racing team. So yeah, I think it's a good move. I mean, assuming there's other factors besides just, is it a good bike? Is it a winning program? Do they have good facilities? Like, you got to be able to mesh with the team and have a good, I don't know, like a good culture that fits with you, right? Or else you're not going to get anything done. And so assuming they've got all that and he's able to get used to the bike, yeah, dude, I think he's going to rip. And, he's obviously getting older, so the time is not on his side at this point. So if he's going to get into the 450 class and do well there as well, he's gotta get hustling. But I think this is his best shot for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, like I said, the whole thing with the 250 class is, and this is what the main thing that frustrates me is when we see really, really good talent that just gets wrapped up in the 250s for way too long, whether if they're on a factory team or not, right? I mean, look, from those guys in that perspective, like, yes, they would like to just make that graduation into the 450 class. But at the same time, they're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to stay in the 250s. Like, Steve Mathis always has the joke of, the best job you can get in the sport is to be a really good 250 rider in Supercross that wins races, but just continues to just come up short of the championship because you continue to get a fat factory contract, but you only have to race pretty much half the races. It ends up being like 9 or 10 races when you count in the showdowns. And then, now you get to be a part of opening ceremonies. That used to not be the case, but you get that that really fat factory contract, but you're doing 60% of the work the 450 guys are doing. So it's kind of a debacle when you think about guys like Austin Faulkner and Jordan Smith and some other guys that, that can, they should be at the 450 just talent wise, not age or anything, but just we know these guys could go tear some dudes up and at least be a top 8 guy in the 450s, but they're continuing to go through the slaughterhouse of the 250s because they just were never able to get over that hump that says, I require you to put me in the 450s. And then it gets to the point that we eventually see some guys go to the 450s because that's just where they can get a ride, right? It's not because they won the championship and were forced to go there or graduated per se. It's just like, well, I can be a 450 privateer for a lot cheaper than it would be to be a 250 privateer, like what we saw with Masterpool. Like, it's the whole thing. So yeah. Let's get into Redbud preview, shall we? A couple of quick news pointers that we've seen going into this this race. Julien Beaumer is out with a concussion. Dude took a massive dirt nap, got straight up run over, unfortunately, last week at Southwick. One point he got run over in the face, both tires, and was out for a while. And reports that I heard from the Pulp Mix guys was like he did not know where he was kind of babbling and whatnot afterwards. So really scary to see that, but he kind of regained his senses and everything shortly after. Was able to put out some social media posts and all that stuff. So he's going to be out for this week. We're not sure how bad the concussion is and how long it's going to take him to get out of protocol. I would suspect. I mean, any injuries at this stage right now coming out of Southwick are really tough because you're going 4 races straight before a break. So I would suspect him to possibly be back next week or the following, maybe more likely the following, because that was pretty nasty, but you never know. I mean, we see some concussions that are like, oh, well, that wasn't too bad. And then they're out for like 5 weeks trying to get out of protocol. And then you see something that's like, okay, that dude was like out for like 8 minutes. There's no way he's back like a week and a half later, like Jalik Swoll. That was pretty crazy. So so Beaumair's out. That kind of sucks for the 250s because he's been really good. This is a weird one. Brock Tickle, the old vet who's been test riding for Cowie, is returning to ride that second Cowie 450 that Adam Cianciarulo is not on anymore. To my knowledge, just for Redbud. So we'll see how that goes. Apparently this has been a plan for the last 2 months. So like it seems that he should be in full race shape, but once again, if you're not racing, there's always a period where you have to race your way back into shape, no matter how much practicing you've been doing. But that'll be interesting to see. But it's always just good to have another factory rider out there mixing it up. Barsha, unfortunately, is going to be out for the remainder of motocross because both of his knees are giving him problems. I believe they're partial tear. One of them was a partial meniscus tear or something like that. The other apparently has 2 tendons that are like off the bone. So, but apparently no surgery is required, is what he said. I don't know how that checks out, but
I got it. Stem cells.
True.
He's going to Tijuana.
There you go. Then afterwards he's going to get on that Ayushka or whatever that Aaron Rodgers was doing. That's going to complete everything.
Oh yeah, and let me tell you, brother, he's coming back and he is ripping. He's going to be ripping.
And dishing out some T-bones probably at SMX. Probably.
Oh yeah.
Nobody's front wheel is safe, brother. Yeah.
No.
Between him and El Hombre with the beef of the Lawrences, it's hilarious.
They're just going to be punting dudes over berms. That's what's going to happen. And
heck, Anderson rode jet wide just to let Chase
I don't mind.
Dude, Thunder Valley, Anderson ran jet wide just to let Chase pass when he was leading for a little bit. That was hilarious. You can just see the point when Anderson did it. He was like, I know I'm not going to win this race, but screw you in particular. Runs Jet completely wide and just lets Jet go right down the inside. Oh, it was hilarious. Oh my gosh. But yeah, the last thing in regards to any like breaking news going into Redbud, and this one we were digging into it. So big disclaimer: this could be fake news. Okay, it could be fake news. But we saw multiple screenshots of like an official PR being put out. Trey Kennard could be returning this weekend to race Honda's new e-bike. I don't know how that works with regulations. I don't know how much he's been training. I have no idea. Obviously, Trey Kennard, fantastic rider back in the day, and he's kind of the same position as Brock Tickle, where he's still riding, but just as a test rider. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to we don't know if this is still facts anymore or if plans have changed. Maybe he's going to do it for like Budds Creek instead. Who knows?
The post was seen. The post was looked for. The post could not be found again.
Yes, it disappeared. So we don't know. But if it is true, then you heard it here first. If it's not true, you didn't hear anything from us. So just remember that.
No. We only said this if it happened. We will go back and edit the pod afterwards.
Yes.
So don't even try and say we were spreading fake news because we
exactly. Exactly.
This will be gone. You'll never hear us say anything. This is gone.
Precisely.
Unless it happened.
Unless it happened.
In
which case, you heard it here first.
You heard it here first. Yeah.
Well, anyway, let's preview Red Bud.
We should do that every week. I think every week we have like just a crazy rumor prediction we just come out with.
Oh, we just start spreading absolute
leave it in.
Like, silly season trash. Just like
if it happens, we leave it in. Turns out doesn't happen. Cut the pod.
All right. Well, in the spirit of that, we'll just double down. Ken Roczen to Triumph. You heard it here first.
Holy hell! Hang on a second. We're getting so crazy. Hey, we go one per week.
Oh, that was the line. That was the line.
Quota's one. Yeah, yeah. Quota's one a week. Okay. All right. This week, bonus 2. Future reference 1. Yeah.
So what'd you say you cut out there for a second?
That'd be Ken to Triumph, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
That was a complete joke.
Unless it happens.
Unless it happens. I think he's still just doing a year-by-year deal with Suzuki. So I have no idea what his contract situation looks like. But
yeah, so everything's on the table basically.
But Kenny is back on the bike because he was recovering from that broken leg. The third to last round of Supercross, if you remember that, going through the whoops. I don't know how he's alive after that. Of all places to lose your rear suspension, that's like the worst spot.
Yeah. The worst, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so going into Red Bud, let's talk 450s and then 250s. 450s, you got Hunter and Chase, I think, pretty much for the title. What are your thoughts? I mean, we've seen these guys battling with each other along with Jett, and a lot of times battling to get to Jett. But we've also seen them square off head-to-head a lot. One being very consistent in his results. The other's Chase. You know me, I'm a delusional Chase Sexton and Malcolm Stewart fan. And once again, this whole season has been just ups and downs and ups and downs. So what are your thoughts in this very interesting two-person matchup for the championship here?
So, I mean, I think it could go either way to a large extent. I think that Chase, when he's been able to get to Jett's back wheel and pass him, it's been somewhat due to that shoulder injury. So he's not been totally beating him straight up, one would say. But Chase has been able to get Hunter.
Yep.
Straight up. And so assuming Chase doesn't, pull a Chase, which he has been doing less. Okay.
Less. Yes.
He's been doing less.
Well, I mean, a lot less
frequently
than last season in motocross in particular.
Oh yeah. So, and he's got a lot of confidence coming in, I'm sure, from that Moto2 last weekend. I think that Jett and Hunter kind of got to a spot at the end there, and they were like, you know what, let the kid run. And Chase was like, I'm not leaving anything up to chance. I am ripping. And so he pulled a nice gap there. And so, if I had to lean one way or the other, I think I'm leaning Chase on this one. It's a scary place to be. Okay. I'm really leaving my heart out on the table. Yeah. So I don't know, but yeah, I'm leaning a little towards Chase this weekend, and yeah, we'll see how the momentum turns going, moto to moto, week to week. But overall, I think it's totally up for grabs. But yeah, I think this next weekend, I'm a little bit slightly favoring Chase.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tale of two different riders, right? Like Hunter obviously has a lot of speed, and on days can run as fast as anybody. Chase just has a slightly higher ceiling in regards to like just what kind of ungodly speed he can run down. But it just seems that, especially over this season and last season, it just takes a lot of boxes to be checked for that to be able to happen. Because he's had setup issues, he's had a new bike this year he's been getting used to. And to be fair, like I think if Jett doesn't exist, then he runs away with it, right? Like heck, last season it was basically him and Jett, 35 seconds, and then the rest of the pack. So if Jett doesn't exist, he doesn't have any setup issues because he's not having to push as hard to gap the field by 20 seconds. But because Jett has required Chase to come off of a 2022 season in motocross where he took Eli Tomac down in the tightest motocross championship battle in history, came down with like winner take all last round. And, you know, he's coming off of that fantastic breakout season for motocross. And then Jett just takes it an even higher level to the point where like he's riding better, but by doing that, he's putting more stress on the bike and the bike's behaving differently from him riding so much faster. That was one thing that they were talking about last week. So, and now you put that on a new KTM, there's more variables there. They don't have the setup data from previous motos and stuff like that and from years past. But despite all of that, Chase has still shown, like you look at that High Point Moto 2, insane. I mean, just insane. I mean, worst to first, it was fantastic. And then his Moto 2 over at South of this last weekend, fantastic, right? And look, and over at Thunder Valley, his Moto 2 was looking great. He straight up passed Jett once again. It's the problem was he tucked the front end about a lap and a half later and was like, ugh. So yeah, I mean, it seems like Moto 2 is always his strong suit. Which for the overall, if you're going 2-1, that always works out for you. But the main thing has been consistency.
Yeah, and that would make a lot of sense with how, you know, they've been doing some setup changes each weekend. So Moto 1, he goes out, kind of figure the bike out, and then Moto 2, he's got things a little more dialed in.
He also just doesn't fade. The dude is without a doubt the fittest rider in the entire sport right now. It's between him and Deegan, in my opinion. And Jett's not far off from Chase in regards to fitness. But I mean, especially with these last couple of rounds with Jett battling that shoulder, he was kind of fading a little bit. We talked about that already. But even with a fully healthy Jett, Chase, without a doubt, is still the absolute, like, I would say, like, physically strongest and just in regards to endurance, fittest rider out there. Dude's built like a brick outhouse. There's no way around it. Okay. Like you could throw like a 2x4 at his leg. It's just going to freaking bounce off. Dude deadlifts like 500 pounds. So that does play a factor as well.
Deadlifts 500 pounds.
Jett even said that at the opening Anaheim 1 press conference that he freaking deadlifts like 500 pounds. It was pretty insane. But I mean, I've watched the dude
deadlift 500 pounds.
Huh?
What's your max deadlift historically?
I never maxed out on deadlift. My squat was 500. Luckily, we didn't have to do that because I hated deadlift, to be quite honest.
I'm not a deadlift guy.
Yeah,
scares me.
I can't touch that nowadays. Too many car accidents. I'm relegated to front squats nowadays. But yeah. No, I mean, look, between the three of those guys we just mentioned, their fitness is all fantastic, but Chase is just a different level of durability and endurance, and just different strength. Yeah. I mean, dude's insane, and it's fun to be able to watch your sport evolve. And if you look at, like, we've talked about this before, you look at Jett and Chase in regards to their body composition, and you look at guys that were the top guys 15 years ago. The guys 15 years ago were all super stringy and, like, they got good core, but they don't have a lot of there's, and still to this day, this is still a thing of the whole idea of if you add on a ton of this raw muscle from strength training in the weight room, your arms can get tired quicker. And look, to a certain extent, especially if you're doing like powerlifting workouts where you're doing like sets of 3 or 4 or 5 with 90% of your max or 85% of your max. Yeah. I mean, your body's going to be conditioned to lift a lot of weight for 5 minutes. Right. But obviously you look at Chase and Jett's build, and you can see there's been a large evolution in regards to adding. I mean, and look, Ricky Carmichael back in the day as well. He pioneered this with Alden Baker, right? We've really seen the athletes take that next step in regards to how can we combine strength and weight training into this sport and make it, completely evolve ourselves as athletes, take it to the next level. And you look at Jett and Chase, it's 2 different body compositions, but Jett's got a neck and traps that are as wide as a freaking bus. but he's still super skinny, but also still super strong. And Chase is just like I said, built like a brick outhouse. It's insane to just watch those two. So it's always good to see that. But yeah, I mean, between Hunter and Chase for the title, but mainly this weekend, I honestly, I think every race it's going to be, we know Hunter's going to have that pace to be up front, right? We haven't seen any motos to where like, oh, he's just off in 12th. Like he had a bad start and couldn't work his way up. There's no like clause
starts
of like,
starts are on point.
And that honestly, I'm trying to figure out if that's more of a Honda thing at this point. Well,
it seems like it might be.
Starts weren't great for Chase last year though when he was on the Honda outdoors. They weren't. I mean, he would be like top
but
5.
Chase is kind of like on the Honda, but like not on the Honda. He's got like a different bike.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. Well, he was running his old setup in 2022 that didn't have the braced frame, and Jett was running the braced frame. That was the main thing.
Dude, Chance Hyman's been ripping some whole shots.
Oh, he's been fantastic. Fantastic.
Yeah. So
this year, especially, the Honda's been a different level of whole shots. But yeah, so between those two, I feel like Chase, especially in Moto 2, always has the potential to just have some kind of ungodly race, right? I think Hunter's more consistent, but I think even with Chase's ups and downs, which I'm sure there's gonna be a lot more of. We're not even this weekend will be pretty much the halfway point. I think even with his ups and downs that we're going to see, I think Chase may narrowly nudge him out, but I think it's going to come down to the last round between these two. I think Hunter's that consistent and still has that top end speed to be able to be there when Chase is off.
I could see it. I think this is definitely going to go back and forth. Yeah. And Hunter's got the consistency. I think, and Chase has probably got a higher ceiling. Mm-hmm. One could say like Chase's max speed might be higher than Hunter's max speed, but how frequently can they hit their max speeds? And I think Hunter hits and maintains his max speed more consistently than Chase does.
Well, let's not forget, this is Hunter's first 450 outdoor season, right? So I think to a certain extent, we still haven't seen the best of him, and he may continue to get better and better as we go on.
Imagine both Lawrence brothers are motocross champions in their rookie seasons.
Insane.
That would be insane. That would be crazy.
They would also be the first brothers to both win 450 championships, I believe. I know in Supercross it hasn't been done. Malcolm, it'd be great if you could pull that off in your last 2 years, but I understand it's probably not going to happen, but the guy can dream.
It's all right. Hey, he's out there.
Yeah.
He's healthy.
Yeah. And he's getting top 10s. I mean, for how many Supercross only contracts that Malcolm Stewart has had once he went 450, it honestly points to like some kind of career mismanagement with his team. And honestly, those who've been given contracts, I know a lot of it has to do with the fact that, especially since when he went to 450s, for the first couple of years, he had to just privateer himself, like get his own truck, do his own stuff, because there just wasn't a lot of rides available for him, despite him winning the 250 class. But so a lot of the contracts he was able to get were for Supercross only, but still it just points to like, man, like for him to basically be coming off the outdoors couch and not racing a lot of these tracks since 10 years, man, like he putting top 10s the way he's doing is pretty freaking good. Now, I know last year he raced like a couple of the last rounds. He was supposed to do the full round, but the whole 2 years ago, he was supposed to do the full outdoor round in his first year with Husqvarna, but Barsha decleated him in Utah at the finale, and that tore his MCL. So he had to get that fixed and then come back later. So the majority of these tracks he hasn't raced at in 10 years. It's pretty wild to think of. So yeah, okay. Trying to move along here. I keep putting us in tangents, so I'm gonna try to shut that down. No, we're never gonna finish here. Dylan Ferrandis, from my perspective, getting better. And from what I've heard, a lot of his early struggles, I mean, we were thinking he was going to be like last year, where he would be like that third or fourth guy that's like, okay, he's 10 seconds ahead of the rest of the pack, but he's not touching Jett and Chase. But he's been like pretty much there with Malcolm a lot of the times. Malcolm and now Christian Craig, kind of in the lower part of the top 10 and not even snipping the top 4. And I know a lot of that has been a power delivery issue with that bike, with the Firepower Honda. And it's funny how he's complaining less about a bike in the Firepower Honda that obviously is a massive step off of the Yamaha that he was on last year. And matter of fact, for Supercross, he was going on and on and on about the bike, saying how much he loved it and how it suited his style and it's what he always wanted. I'm like, really? And he's Supercross got some top fives. It was hot to start and was pretty much always in that 7 to 5 range. Then got injured and then kind of came back for a round or two at the end, I think, and really kind of like the Ferrandis hype of, oh well, could he break into the top 3? And it kind of fizzled. But the whole time was like, love the bike, love the bike, love the bike. And this is a guy that's notorious for just saying, oh, the bike's this, the bike's that, like complaining about the bike, especially last year with Yamaha, right? So, but it's weird how even with obviously he's way farther off the pace this year than he was last. And there's obviously a much bigger gap outdoors, especially where he specializes between his current bike and where his last bike was. He's somehow complaining less or just less louder about his current bike than he was last year on the Yamaha. It's funny to me. So I don't know. What do you think Ferrandis can kind of figure this out with Firepower Honda, or do you think he kind of stays where he's at for the rest of the motocross, comes for SMX, is still kind of more your 7 to 9 spot for that, and then either retires or tries to find another home next season?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if they can get the bike faster, they might be in a good spot. And I mean, it does. I would say it's not completely crazy. I could see it making sense that the bike from a chassis and suspension standpoint is more comfortable for him. And so he likes the way that it rides better, even though it's not as fast. I could totally see that. I mean, if you've got, a jet engine on a piece of plywood, it's probably faster than, a little remote control car.
Yeah.
But, a jet engine on a piece of plywood, you're not going to go to turn.
Yeah, it's true.
So I would feel pretty uncomfortable. That's all I'm saying. So
yeah, pretty much facts there. Well, looking at Redbud further, I think Ferrandis is still going to stay in that 7 to 9 spot. On the low, this is another one of those you heard it here first. My prediction off of hope and faith of just being right, no actual sources, just spitballing here. I think Ferrandis is going to leave Firepower Honda after this year. And I think you'll see Christian Craig take that spot because we know Craig is pretty much going to be. I don't think Rockstar is going to renew his deal. Craig's contract's up at the end of this year. I think he's out, unfortunately. But I mean, in my opinion, also it's the right move for Rockstar because of the fact that you've got RJ coming, and what I've also heard is that eventually Husqvarna and Gas are going to merge because kind of the Austrian factory teams are having to downsize majorly over at MXGP. And over here, they're going to have to do a small amount of downsizing. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know when that would take effect, but I don't think we're going to see Husqvarna run a 3-man team. So I think Craig is out. I think Craig's best option is to go to maybe HEB Suzuki or to Firepower Honda or something like that. But I think Firepower Honda is more the better route because I think Ferrandis is either going to be done and he's going to retire after this year or he's going to go somewhere else. This is me.
Do you think that we could see – because who was it leaving Triumph going to Suzuki?
Shoot. Well,
was that
Colt Nichols? I missed this on the breaking news. Colt Nichols is leaving Beta. And the word on the street, basically, Mathis is saying this is confirmed, but I haven't seen any announcement from Colt saying it's true. But Mathis is speaking as if it's already going to happen. He is going to? It's already official. He's leaving Beta. That's been announced. But apparently he's going to join the Twisted Tea Suzuki team and basically take McElrath's spot. Oh, I don't know about take McElrath's spot, but just be another person on that.
Be on the team. Yeah.
And apparently this will allow Colt to be back for outdoors at Millville. And allow him to do more outdoors. He'll still be able to do World Supercross, but he'll also do Super Motocross as well. which was big for
Gotcha.
Colt because his contract with Beta was for Supercross only. So
Yeah.
but yeah,
Well, I'm keeping my hopes alive that somehow, somewhere, Craig will find a full factory ride because I think he's got the sauce if he can get on a team and on a bike that that suits him.
I think him
That's
switching to that steel frame. I mean, look, you remember all the hype he had after he won that championship in 2022, and people
yeah,
were talking about, hey, Malcolm, watch out. There's gonna be a new number one Husky rider in town. And he's also a whoop god. His name's Christian Craig. And everyone was like, yeah, what do you think about Craig
yeah.
in his first year? I think he's going to be a top 5 guy. Does he get a podium? Does he get one win? Some guys were thinking he got one win and 2 podiums, and we got nothing. Nothing
Well,
really.
because dude, I don't think that was misplaced. Obviously, he did awesome on 250s, and
Yeah.
then he went and raced 450s in motocross, and he was top 5. Like he
Yeah.
was up there, and so like all the facts, all the evidence out on the table,
It
and
was
it
the
was
right
like,
move.
yeah,
No, it
Craig
was the right
Scott,
move. It just didn't work out. And I think a lot of that had to do
yeah,
with the transition from that Yamaha aluminum frame to the steel frame. Some guys can handle that transition well. And I was surprised that Malcolm handled it as good as he did. I mean, heck, his first year on the Husky, he got 3rd overall in the points. It was his best season ever. But then you look at Craig, and it just looked like he was not the same in the whoops, and he just looked uncomfortable. Still silky smooth as he always rides, but just not the same level of speed and that comfortability that we always see with that smoothness. So, in my opinion, I think Firepower Honda is his best spot because you're basically like 95% of the support, maybe more like 90% of the support of the factory Honda team, kind of like a Club MX, but he gets to go back to that aluminum frame that I think would suit him in the whoops way better, way better. And I think that would bring him more back into a 7 to 5 average rider, which I think he's kind of at this point in his career. I think that's where he could peak, especially within the next year or two. I think maybe from there, that's kind of like his Max Anstey springboard to get maybe a 1-year deal with a factory to finish out. I don't know, but yeah, I do think Craig needs to get back to an aluminum frame. And if that means going to a Firepower Honda or a Club MX, you need to freaking do it. And hey, look, Club MX is going to have a spot open. Nicoletti's gone. So, now let's see. Does Club MX have 450s? Because I know Nicoletti did 250s for Supercross.
I don't think they have a 450 squad.
Not for Supercross, but for motocross they do. And for super motocross they do. I don't know if they had anybody for Supercross and 450s.
I was just in with that. I don't think they did have an SX team this last year.
Well, get you one.
So.
Go get Christian Craig. Problem solved. But anywho, all right, moving along at this point, like a herd of turtles, courtesy of me. With Jett being out and it kind of being between Hunter and Chase at this point, does this open the door for someone like AP or Jason Anderson to insert themselves as, hey, like the third guy and someone that can be up there and battling with Chase and Hunter? And if so, which one of those two? I mean, we saw Anderson punt Jett off, but that doesn't count as battling.
No, that's just racing is what that is. I would say AP. AP has been there. Like, he's faded a little bit towards the end of the race. Obviously not being able to hold the pace that those top 3 guys were able to, for the full extent of the moto. But for the first, half, he was sitting right there with them, right there in 4th place. So, yeah, I could see AP being that guy. And
let's not forget. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but let's not forget at High Point he would have won Moto 2 if it were for Chase Sexton going full DGAF like God mode. It came down to the last turn, and AP didn't just like lead that thing. He was several seconds ahead of Hunter. I mean, Jett was hurt, but Jett too, like the whole rest of the field. Justin Cooper didn't have anything for Aaron Plessinger. No one else except Chase Sexton had anything for AP at Moto 2 at High Point. And obviously, I think he hasn't been able to tap into that, but maybe these tracks just haven't worked out for him as well. I know Southwick wasn't going to work out for him as well. But going to Red Bull, that could be a spot for him to get back in the podium and maybe mix it up.
Well, and there is definitely going to be a mindset change for those guys that were battling for 4th, because the idea of like, okay, I'm battling for fourth is not the same as I'm battling for third. A podium spot, like, okay, if you're not first, you're last. But if you're not third, you're really last.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
you're
like
missing on that
that's
bonus check, baby. I mean,
exactly. So like, I mean, you go to the Olympics and you know, gold, silver, bronze. You know what all three of those things have in common?
get a piece
They're
of
a
metal.
medal.
Yep.
Yeah, they're a medal. Fourth, no one cares. No one cares.
Little pat on the back and get on the plane.
Yeah, it's more of a push on the back, to go home. Say, hey, get out of here, buddy.
Yeah.
So yeah, for them to be now battling for third, that's going to put a little more vigor in them. I think they're going to be a little more excited about the potential, and they're going to race harder. I think for it, I would say.
I
But
agree.
we'll see. Yeah.
Okay, well, I think I don't think there's much else to talk about with the 450s. I would just say continue to watch Christian Craig and see, because we know Craig is pretty freaking good outdoors. We
Yeah.
know he's been coming back off of that elbow injury that resurfaced itself once again in the middle of Supercross this year, and kind of just said peace out to like the back third of the season so that he could get that operation done to get it like apparently it's supposed to be like the final thing to get it fixed. And then just prep for outdoors. So I think he's going to continue to get better. I don't know if he breaks the top 5. I think he ends up being right where Malcolm is, in my opinion. But I'm interested to see if he can try to do anything to convince Husqvarna to be like, okay, we'll give you a 1 year. I don't know. Because I think for next year, you could run, like for Supercross, you could run a 3-man team, because RJ was only requesting to run opposite coast 450s. So it kind of be like, it wouldn't be too crazy to do, especially for Husqvarna.
Yeah.
But that would require like Craig putting in like some major results outdoors that would make them want to go, well, if he can do anything in Supercross, okay, but at least we'll have someone outdoors that can be top 5s. Maybe.
Yeah, outdoors, or if he can put in a charge in SMX, one of the two.
Yeah.
So
I think it would take both for them to give him even a 1 year at this point, because I'm pretty sure he's out the door. But yeah, let's finish with 250s. This is another area where we have a 3-way battle. At one point, it was 4 with how good Kitchen looked at the start. But your major players are Deegan, Vial, and Hymas, with Kitchen kind of fading out in from just his lack of results, quite frankly, the last couple weeks. And Masterpool kind of inserting himself as a potential podium guy and hopefully consistent top 5 guy. He had an awesome race win at Thunder Valley. It was so awesome to see. So in regards to this weekend between Deeks, Vial, Hymas, if you want to consider Kitchen, you can throw him in there if you think he's going to have a bounce back ride to kind of get things back into the picture. Between those top kind of, let's just talk about the top 3. Your top 3 are Deeks, Vial, and Hymas. Who do you think has the best shot to? We're not talking about sleepers just yet, but who do you think has the best shot between those 3 to come out on top this weekend?
it's got to be Deegan. He got his first overall win here last year. Didn't actually win either of the motos, but overall he took it. So I think it's him. Obviously, very American. This is America's weekend, as you can see.
Exactly.
So yeah, I'm going Deegan on this one, and yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think the other guys, something could happen if he goes down, isn't able to get one of those recovery rides. Very possible. So Deegan by a slim margin. I'm not talking about a runaway, 20-second gap or nothing like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Vial and Hymas will be in play, but I don't think they'd beat in both motos. So I think if Deegan loses the overall, it's going to be off of a 1-2 and someone else getting a 2-1, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't think Kitchen's going to be in the picture, in my opinion. Like I said, he looked great at the first couple rounds, and then the last 3 especially, he's completely fallen off a cliff. Gotten beaten by Masterpool a couple of times, actually, which has been kind of crazy to see. And Masterpool got an overall victory before he did. once again, crazy because Masterpool was informed that he was going to be riding this 2 days before Paula round 1 and had basically about an hour and a half on the bike before round 1. So just insane what he's been able to do. I hope Masterpool continues to get better and better and better, especially as a Texan, because Ty rides out of Dallas, is from Texas. Freaking really cool.
Love to see it.
So yeah, speaking of of that, let's get into sleepers. Any other outside guys we have? I've obviously said Masterpool. I think you have another person in mind that you think is a threat to win this weekend. But for me, it's Masterpool. You look at his stats. Pretty much his whole claim to fame outdoors previous to this season, other than last season being great on the 450 and being a 450 privateer, was back when he was still with I believe Star Yamaha in 2020. And at Redbud 2020 was the fastest qualifier and got a podium. And that was kind of his best accomplishment until Thunder Valley of this year, where he got the overall. So obviously a good track for him. And I think he is an even better rider now than he was then. And I think he's at a minimum going to be a top 5 guy without any kind of crazy crashes or anything like that. And he could be a guy that could sneak into the top 3. So that's kind of my sleeper, especially with how chaotic this sport can be. You never know what could happen. So I think he's shown the pace. I think he's shown more consistent pace to be in the top 5 than Levi over the last couple of rounds. So for who's your sleeper pick to watch for 250s this weekend? Like I said, we skipped over sleepers for 450s because but 250s, there's some significant sleepers. So who's your pick?
Yeah, dude, I think Joe Shimoda.
Yeah.
I think he's got some real potential. I think that, and it's not like he hasn't had the potential up until last weekend. It's always been there. It's always there with him. It's just he's got to turn it on. And I think with that confidence he's gonna have coming in from last weekend, dude, he was the fastest guy on the track there at the end of that second moto. That was the most recent thing that happened. You're only as good as your last race. Yep. And guess what? That means he's the guy.
Don't forget, Moto 1, he rode fantastic as well. He just got knocked over in turn 1 and went from like dead last to the top 10. So if it weren't for the fact that he got knocked over coming out of the gate, he could have been in play for that overall. I mean, as good 100%. As Deegan was riding, it would have been close in my opinion. I think the 3 best guys that day were Vial, Shimoda, and Deegan, and I think everyone else was out of play, in my opinion.
And it wasn't even like it was kind of a similar situation to Masterpool's win, kind of. Yeah. Because they both got the win in the second moto. Obviously, Masterpool's was run overall, Shimoda's was not. But you run that race that Masterpool won one more lap, Deegan wins.
Correct.
Right? Like, he was right there. If you run last weekend one more lap,
you don't know.
Shimoda, I think, still wins.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like Deegan was right there on him, about to pass him. Like, Shimoda had the pace. And if we go back, not but just 2 years ago, Shimoda won this.
Yeah.
He won Redbud 2 years ago. So
the other thing was we still don't know exactly where Deegan sat there, because obviously he was having bike issues. Like, his bike was smoking and he had to completely back off of it the last lap and a half to just make sure he could limp it home. But even before that, Shimoda held a 8-second gap a 5.5 second gap over Deegan for the back 50% of that race. Deegan, until those last couple laps when Shimoda started to battle Vial when he fell back, Deegan didn't have anything for him. Now, like I said, Deegan is always a huge threat to just, in those last couple laps, pull 4 seconds out of nowhere. But in regards to your overall pace, no, you're 100% right. Deegan and Shimoda were pretty much on par with each other. The other thing we talked about in the preview was all we talked about with Shimoda was from a point standpoint and contending for the title was, can you just hang in there for the first couple of rounds? Can you do well enough to be in, say, the top 5, the top 4? And I don't know where he sits right now. I don't think he's, I think the top 5 is Deegan, Hymas, probably Vial in third. And then you've got Screw it, I'm just going to Google it real quick.
Hang on. I got you.
Yep.
The stats are coming.
Stats loading. Stats loading. Look at that. Deegan, Hymas, Vial, somehow Levi Kitchen.
Yeah.
I'll be dadgum. Shimoda's 5th. Okay. And how many points? He's got 174.
About 60.
Deegan's at 238. Yeah, about 60.
64 points back.
Yeah.
So it's an uphill battle, but not impossible.
Not impossible.
I mean, it's a lot.
And one thing,
it's a lot of points.
It's a lot.
It's a lot.
But one weekend, right? One weekend. I mean, that's one weekend's 50 points. So
yeah. So
and we're not at the halfway point
yeah.
yet. We will be after this weekend. And the one thing we were talking about was just, can Shimoda be anywhere near the top 3 or top 4, really? Because what we saw last year is it just took so long for him to get good. It's similar with this season in Supercross. Is it just he struggles to be good and be in contention at the start, and he always seems to come on when the pressure's off. He won the last round. He won the overall in the last round in motocross last year. Got to win this year in Supercross towards the end as well. So I'm glad we're seeing at least an emergence of him being able to win a moto relatively early. We're almost at the halfway point, but like, that's better than last year. So yeah. I would watch him closely and see if he can walk down this gap a little bit. I don't think he'll be able to catch Deegan. I don't even think he'll be able to catch Hymas with how well Hymas is riding. But I'm interested to see if he can start stacking some more moto wins here, and maybe even some more overalls, and work this gap back. Yeah. I think he could. But when you've got other guys that have been more consistent and up front more often than you, between Hymas, Vial, and early in the season, Kitchen, but I think he's kind of fallen off. I think Kitchen's going to fall back down to 5th or 6th by the end of the season. I think Shimoda could be in play for a top 3 in the standings. I just don't know if he'll be able to have enough time to get anywhere near 2nd or 1st.
Yeah. It's going to be tough, but it's not impossible. No doubt.
Yeah, not impossible. No. Well, before we wrap up, do you have any other crazy predictions for this weekend? Do you think anything about Max Anstey or anything else, or heck, Brock Tickle coming out from the grave?
Yeah, I think Anstey gets a top 10. I know he had a crash in that first moto, messed him up a little bit. But I think we see a little more of Anstey. I don't know that he's a podium guy right now with how new he is to the bike, but yeah, I think he's up there, and he's running for top 10, maybe top 5.
I could see him getting a 5:10 for 8th, quite honestly.
Oh, yeah.
Because we know he's good, but he just needs time to get back into riding outdoors a little bit more and like you said, get used to the bike. So I'll definitely be watching out for Max. Of course, I was stupid enough to put him on my Pulp MX fantasy team for Southwick on his first race back, because people were like, he could be a play for the win because we know he's a good sand rider from his MXGP days. I was like, you know what? Screw it. I'm just going to put him in. We'll put him in.
Hey, it's not a terrible pick.
We made it 3 corner. We made it like a lap and a half or 3 corners or something like that. And then I just look at him on the ground with the bike smoke. I'm like, it's because I picked him. It's my luck.
Oh, geez,
anywho, all right. Well, I think that's a wrap for this one. I think we've bench raced enough here. I'm super excited to watch Red Bull this weekend. Sucks that Jett's going to be out of it for the rest of this motocross season, but we will be getting back Tomac and Webb at some point within the next 4 to 5 weeks. So that'll be something good to look forward to. I'm not saying this, but some people are saying that Jett I can't even say this seriously. Some people were joking that Jett's faking the injury to dodge battling Tomac head on in outdoors because he's scared of Tomac. I'm like, I can't even say it seriously. It's obviously not true, but my goodness, I saw that comment on Twitter and I was like, okay, that's pretty funny. But all right, thank you guys for listening, and we'll try to get back as soon as we can for another episode. And hope you guys have a great America Day for the 4th of July, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Hell yeah, brother. See you.